We got to start with the biggest story of the draft. Michael Penix Jr. getting drafted number 8 to the Atlanta Falcons, even though they just gave Kirk Cousins all the money in the world, every Chick-fil-A and Waffle House they have in Atlanta, and this, that, and the fourth. So I'm going to let you have the floor first to see what you think about this.
So I've gone back and forth a lot about this since the pick was made.
Likewise.
I don't have an issue with Atlanta trying to think ahead and try to get your quarterback of the future. I have no issue with that. You have Kirk Cousins, who's on the backside of his career, coming off an Achilles injury, which that's a big thing that you need to factor in. Is there's no guarantee that Kirk Cousins comes back 100% from this. So I have no problem with your contingency plan being, well, we're going to get a quarterback. I think my issue, and it's not so much with Penix, it's you're taking a quarterback that potentially is going to sit for 4 to 5 years if you go the length of the contract before he plays. And Michael Penix is the oldest quarterback in this draft class. That's where I think you're doing. It doesn't make sense to me, considering you had J.J. McCarthy on the board, who is 3 years younger. Now, okay, if you want to do the succession plan and you want to wait the 4 years out of the Kirk Cousins contract, KP, then it makes a little bit of sense because you still have this young quarterback in the prime of their career, but you're taking Penix, who may be 30 by the time he plays. Like, you're going to have to do this cycle again rather quickly because you picked the oldest quarterback. It's no knock on Penix. I don't have an issue with the plan. It's considering who else was there. I would have, if that's what your plan is, I wouldn't have taken Penix.
See, the J.J. McCarthy age point, I've yet to hear that one, and I think that's the best counter to Penix point. Because my whole thing is, I have no problem with Penix, the quarterback. As anyone who's listened to this podcast knows, I might be president of the Penix fan club. But if the plan is we're not going to start him for 5 years, then you get the 21-year-old J.J. McCarthy so that when he gets in there, he's 26 and not 31. But here's where I disagree with you, Dave. I don't think that's the plan. I don't think that's the plan at all. There's all these articles and headlines about what does this say that the Falcons think about Kirk Cousins. They just told us exactly what they think about Kirk Cousins. You don't draft the number 8 overall pick without the intention of starting him that season. That's not how the NFL works. That's too valuable of a draft pick to do that. I know it doesn't really feel that way because Kirk Cousins signed that deal, a month ago, a month and a half ago? But clearly something has happened between signing Kirk Cousins and that night at the NFL draft where they said, we might need we might already be feeling buyer's remorse. And I know that contract seems hefty, but it's an NFL quarterback. The price is the price. And there was no. Go ahead.
My only agreement I would have with you on that would be if the medicals have started to come back and it's like we talked about. Okay, maybe now Kirk Cousins isn't exactly 100%, may not get back to 100%. Then okay, now the move makes a little bit more sense. You get the older quarterback because the older quarterback has the most experience and ready to go. But I really can't see Arthur Blank sitting there saying, fuck it, we just signed Kirk Cousins to all this money and we're going to play a 26-year-old quarterback. Like, I don't see that happening unless something in the medical realm that we don't know about, because that's not information that gets leaked out a lot of times, has come to light where Atlanta's like, okay, now we've got to change our plan. Now, from everything I've heard and everything I've read, Atlanta fell in love with Michael Penix. And that happens.
Can't say I blame him.
Look, if I had this argument with a lot of people. If I needed a quarterback this year, I would have gone Michael Penix or Bo Nix because they're the two big arm quarterbacks. They're the two most experienced quarterbacks. They're the two that you would have the most confidence outside of Caleb Williams starting day one.
Right.
Like I could put Penix or Nix out there and say, okay, I have confidence they're not going to completely stink the joint up.
So my thing is, right, the irony of all this is, this is possible scenario. They're like, we're not sure about Kirk Cousins' medicals. Let's go draft Michael Penix. And again, I love Penix. None of this is a single indictment of Michael Penix, the football player, because I think he's incredible. And funny enough, in my 2 mock drafts, I had him going at 8, just not to the Falcons. I had the Raiders trading up for him in both, because I think he was always a top 10 pick. He was always my QB4. And I just always saw a scenario where there were 6 QBs going in the top 12. So the spot isn't my issue. It's the Falcons. And I really do think, you said the Arthur Blank thing. I think what really brings that to an account, I think back to the Broncos situation where they got rid of Russell Wilson recently. I think we're going to start to see a trend where these owners are just going to be like, fuck it. If we have to take a giant cap hit so that the team could win right now because we have a better situation, then it is what it is. Well, I really do think that's just going to be reality now.
And you know what? You make a good point that I think the way the quarterback market is going, I had this conversation on one of the other podcasts I do, the Ed Block Courage cast, with Wally Williams, Dwayne Clemens, and Willie Anderson, all former players. And the thing we came back to is that the quarterback money is getting to an absurd level.
It's ridiculous.
Right? Like, we're going to have, and these are good quarterbacks, but Tua's going to make upwards of $50 million. Jared Goff's going to make upwards of $50 million. Like, it's not sustainable if the quarterback isn't playing at that level to have that contract. So that point you make is very valid too, of, hey, Denver said, look, we're not going to, it's not working. It's not working with this money. I just think, I'm just surprised you're doing it before the guy's even gotten into camp. You might even be contemplating that. That's the biggest part to me that I cannot wrap my head around, is you already looked at this and you said, shit.
we may have messed up already.
Big time. Like, that's the part I can't wrap my head around. It's no knock on Michael Penix. I can't even fault really the logic of the brain trust of the Falcons for saying we want to have a succession plan in place. I think that's great. I think that's a smart thing to do.
It's like the parts aren't the problem. It's the sum of its parts that's the problem. It's the fact that this is the conclusion you came to is the issue. All the pieces make sense. It's like we gave you flowers, eggs, milk, butter, whatever, and then you make a fucked up cake in the end. It's like, how? But like this is all you needed, and then somehow this is where you came.
So I want to ask you this question. Before we wrap it. Let's say different scenario happens. As my camera, it's having a face for radio, Kev. The camera realizes it after a while. Let's say they take JJ McCarthy as opposed to Michael Penix. I think we have a whole different conversation now. I think everybody kind of sits there and says, hey, that's a really good move for Atlanta, right? You get a young quarterback, couple years to develop on a Kirk Cousins. I just think it's because you drafted Penix and the age factor is why everybody looks at this move and says, this doesn't make a damn lick of sense.
I feel like it would make a little more sense if it was JJ McCarthy, but then there'll be people like me saying, okay, but you did draft the worst quarterback. you did draft the quarterback who isn't as good. And last point before we get to our nice little draft gimmick, and this is just between me and Kirk Cousins right now. Kirk, buddy, you better play your ass off. You are in Atlanta, Georgia, and you have a black backup quarterback behind you. Brother, you better play your ass off, or that city is going to want your head. Those we want Penix chants are going to come week 10 if y'all aren't first in the NFC South. Book it. Book it.